Welcome back to State and Local Government and Politics, Module 5, State Constitutions. In Part 3, we'll discuss changing constitutions. There are three major methods available to change or amend U.S. state constitutions. The methods include a legislative proposal, a popular initiative, and a constitutional convention. A fourth method, only available in Florida, involves a constitutional commission submitting a proposal directly to the state's voters for their consideration. Additionally, each state has the potential for a virtual constitutional amendment through a judicial reinterpretation of constitutional provisions. Of the four methods listed, only the Constitutional Convention provides elected officials an opportunity to collaborate directly in a deliberative setting on the entire Constitution. The legislative proposal method is the main avenue used in all U.S. states to amend their respective constitutions. To demonstrate how heavily this method is used, in the 5-year period 2002 to 2006, the legislative proposal constituted 68% of all amendment proposals, with the initiative process comprising the remaining 32%. This legislative process is ordinarily used for making limited changes, but on rare occasions the process has been used in some states to propose rather comprehensive revisions of their constitutions. What makes the legislative constitutional amendment proposal different than simple legislation is the requirement of a large supermajority consensus in both houses, with the minimum being 2/3. In addition, 15 states have an even more arduous hurdle called double passage. This is an amendment procedure that requires majority consensus in both houses from 2 separate legislative sessions. All states except Delaware require that legislative amendment proposals be submitted to the state's voters for their ultimate approval by a vote. About 2/3 of all state amendments deal with rather mundane issues such as state and local government structure and debt management, state agency functions, and relatively minor taxation and finance issues. The constitutional initiative is also known as the popular initiative, citizens' initiative, minority initiative, and the Oregon system, which empowers citizens to propose constitutional amendments directly to voters for their ultimate consideration. Available in 18 states, the process is broken down into either direct or indirect initiatives. A direct initiative process allows for a constitutional amendment proposed by the people to be placed directly on the ballot for voter approval or rejection, while the indirect initiative must first be submitted to the state legislature for consideration before being placed on the popular ballot. Only the states of Mississippi and Massachusetts, among the 18 states featuring the initiative process, use the indirect initiative process. Each state has its own requirements for placement on the ballot, but typically, an initiative proposal requires a certain percentage of registered voter signatures before the state's voters can place it on the ballot for consideration. In those states where the initiative is in place, it is particularly important that citizens keep informed about state and local government issues. These issues are very likely to come before them as voters on a regular basis. The origins of the initiative process go back to 1902, when the Oregon legislature adopted a constitutional amendment to allow residents of Oregon to propose new laws or change the state constitution through a general election ballot measure. This is why the initiative process is known nationally as the Oregon system of direct democracy. A constitutional convention is the oldest and most traditional method to propose a new state constitution or extensively revise an existing constitution. The process of initiating a convention begins with a formal call from the legislature, an action which all 50 states and the District of Columbia can undertake. 14 states also require submitting the question of calling a constitutional convention to their voters, thereby requiring the legislature to hold such a conclave. Throughout the history of the United States, there have been relatively few constitutional conventions. As of the end of 2021, there have only been 234 constitutional conventions held in the U.S., with Rhode Island holding the last one in 1992 to address its dire fiscal challenges. The revision proposed was soundly defeated by 62% of the state's voters. There are several reasons for this sharp decline, but the biggest possibility is the concern that holding a convention will open up Pandora's box, that is, unleash a torrent of issues to which no course of action can be agreed to, and ultimate resolution of the issue is not possible. Those on both sides of an issue often fear that a convention is an invitation to provide a forum for either reactionary populism or the devotion of disproportionate attention to matters of temporary importance, thereby allowing the electorate an opportunity to insert provisions on controversial issues such as abortion, balanced budgets, and the death penalty, or address issues unrelated to the purpose giving rise to the convention. The Constitutional Commission is an entity that all states can use, but few in the general public have ever heard of the process. This is likely since, except for Florida, commissions have no direct contact with the public or voters. Each state commission's roles and membership vary from that of other states, but traditionally they represent a group of experts who are appointed, usually by the legislature and/or governor, to review the Constitution and submit proposed amendments to the legislature or prepare for a constitutional convention. If members are deemed to be impartial, the commission can be successful. Legislatures typically consider commission recommendations carefully if the commission is deemed to be unbiased, nonpartisan, and expert in constitutional law. The state of Utah, for example, in 1969, adopted a law to establish the Constitutional Revision Study Commission to study the state's constitution and make periodic revision or amendment recommendations to the governor and state legislature. The commission was made permanent in 1997 and given the official title of Constitutional Revision Commission. The Virginia Constitution can be amended through two different paths. The Virginia State Legislature can propose amendments through legislatively referred constitutional amendments as established in Section 1 of Article 12 of the Commonwealth of Virginia Constitution. These can be proposed in either house of the General Assembly. If a proposed amendment is approved by a simple majority vote in one session of the state legislature, it is automatically referred to the next session of the state legislature that occurs after the next general election of members of the Virginia House of Delegates. If in that second session the proposed amendment is agreed to by a majority of all the members elected to each house, it is then placed before the state's voters. It can go on a special or general election ballot. If approved by a simple majority vote, it becomes part of the state's constitution. Amendments to or revisions of the state constitution can be proposed by a constitutional convention as established in Section 2 of Article 12. A convention can happen if the state legislature, by a vote of 2/3 of the members elected to each house, calls a convention. Virginia does not feature the power of initiative for either initiated constitutional amendments or for initiated state statutes. In Part 4, we'll discuss the role of the courts.